Hello, mathematicians. Today we're going to be learning about ratios. More specifically, we're going to convert customary measurement units using proportional reasoning, also known as cross multiplication. So here we have a table of customary conversions. We have different types of measurements such as length, weight, capacity. And this table shows us the ratio of relationships between larger and smaller units of customary conversions for length, weight, and capacity. So our first question says, how many feet are in 48 inches? We're going to use this table to help us figure out how many feet are in 48 inches. So in our table, we're going to look for where it talks about feet and where it talks about inches. And in our table, it says that 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. So we're going to use that information to help us solve for this problem. So we're going to start off by taking the information from our table and writing that as a ratio. So we write 1 foot over 12 inches. That information is just from our table. Now, we know that they're 48 inches, so we're going to write 48 inches on the bottom because we want the feet next to each other on the top, so that the feet is both our numerators, and then we want our inches as both our denominators just so that they stay next to each other. So we don't know how many feet are in 48 inches, and that's why we put an X there, and that's what we're solving for. So, in order to use proportional reasoning, we're going to take the two numbers that are diagonal from each other. So here we have 1 and 48 that are diagonal from each other. There is no diagonal number to 12, so we can't use that one. So we're going to take these two diagonal numbers and multiply them together. 1 times 48 is equal to 48. Then we're going to take our last number, which is 12, and we're going to take the 48 and divide that by the 12. 48 divided by 12 is equal to 4. So that means that X is equal to 4. So that means that there are 4 feet in 48 inches. Our next question says, how many inches are in 5 feet? We're going to do the same thing where we look at our table. We're going to look for inches and feet. And by now we should know that 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. We're going to take the information from the table and write that as a ratio. So we have 1 foot over 12 inches. This information here is just from our table, okay? And then we're going to write an equal sign. And in the problem, we want to figure out how many inches are in 5 feet. So what's known to us is that it is 5 feet. So we're going to write the 5 feet on the numerator because if we look at our ratio, we're talking about feet on the numerator. So that means we're going to keep the inches on the denominators because we're talking about inches on the denominators. Because we don't know how many inches are in 5 feet, we're going to use a variable until we figure out what that answer is. So a variable is just a letter in math to represent something we don't know. So if we use proportional reasoning here, we have to look for the two numbers that are diagonal to each other. And in this case, we have 12 and 5 that are diagonal to each other. So we're going to go ahead and multiply those two diagonal numbers. 12 times 5 is equal to 60. Then we're going to take the 60 and divide that by the third number that's left over, which is 1. 60 divided by 1 is equal to 60, so that means that in 5 feet there are 60 inches. All right, so our next problem says, how many pounds are in 80 ounces? So we're going to take a look at our table and we're going to look for pounds and ounces. And in our table, we know that 1 pound is equal to 16 ounces. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the information from our table and write that ratio down. So we have 1 pound over 16 ounces. That is the ratio that we got from our table. Then we're going to take the information from our question. So our question said, how many pounds are in 80 ounces? We don't know how many pounds there are in 80 ounces, so we write X pounds. And then we know that there's 80 ounces, so we just write down the 80 ounces. Notice that in our numerators, we're talking about pounds, and our denominators, we're talking about ounces. We're going to keep the same unit on the top and the same unit on the bottom. So now that we've set up our proportional relationship, we're going to go ahead and multiply the two numbers that are diagonal. And in this case, we have 1 and 80. So 1 times 80 is equal to 80. Then we're going to take that answer and divide it by our last number, which is 16. And 80 divided by 16 is equal to 5. So that means that there are 5 pounds in 80 ounces. Our next question says, how many ounces are in 2 pounds? Again, we're going to look at our table for ounces and pounds, and we know by now that 1 pound is equal to 16 ounces. So we're going to take the information from the table and write that as a ratio. So once we've done that, now we're going to set up the information that we have from our question. So we don't know how many ounces are in 2 pounds, so make sure that when you write the ounces, you write X ounces. And we know that there are 2 pounds, so we're going to write 2 pounds. Remember, we're keeping the same units as our numerators and the same units as our denominators. So that means that we have pounds as the numerator and ounces as the denominator. Now, we're going to go ahead and solve. We know that 16 and 2 are diagonal from each other, so we're going to multiply 16 times 2. 16 times 2 is equal to 32. And then we're going to divide by the third number, which in this case is 1. 32 divided by 1 is equal to 32. So that means that there are 32 ounces in 2 pounds. Our next question asks, how many gallons are in 36 quarts? So we're going to look at our table and we're going to look for gallons and quarts. We know that 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts, so we're going to write that ratio. Again, this ratio just comes from our table, 1 gallon over 4 quarts. Then we're going to set up our proportion here, and we don't know how many gallons there are, so we write X gallons. And we know that there are 36 quarts, so that's what we write down. So again, our numerators are talking about gallons and our denominators are talking about quarts. Now we're going to take our two numbers that are diagonal, which are 1 and 36, and multiply those two together. 1 times 36 is equal to 36, and then we divide by the last number, which is 4. 36 divided by 4 is equal to 9. So that means that there are 9 gallons in 36 quarts. Finally, we have how many quarts are in 6 gallons. Again, we're going to look for quarts and gallons on our table. And by now we should know that 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. So we're going to take the information from our table and write that as a ratio. Once we have that, we're going to set up our proportions. So in our question, we know that there are 6 gallons, so we write down 6 gallons, but we don't know how many quarts there are, so we write X quarts. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply the two numbers that are diagonal from each other, which are 4 and 6, and 4 times 6 is equal to 24. Then we're going to divide by the third number, which is 1. So 24 divided by 1 is equal to 24. So that means that there are 24 quarts in 6 gallons.